Why do you think this is a much bigger deal than just another way Palantir saves a company some money? Why is it bigger than that?
Because the amount of counterparties that Cardinal has is crazy. Okay. So what happens is, imagine right now you're a hospital, you're Cardinal. You work with so many hospital systems and so many hospitals that now what you're able to do is provide them a service. But then if that counterparty sees the value in it, they're also going to have like, you're almost going to have like a door into that business saying, look, because you use this product, you really liked it. Let's integrate Palantir into the other side of the equation. So here's an example: Airbus, right? Airbus was the original partner for Palantir so that you can create its healthcare suite and all this, not healthcare suite, like the plane monitoring suite. And then Airbus was able to sell that to the airlines, right?
Yeah.
So now all these airlines have Palantir working through Skywise. Imagine right now, Cardinal and Palantir create an inventory management tool that directly inferences ordering and budgeting supplies with Cardinal. So now, same thing happens, the same logic. Cardinal is able to sell the hospital system and inventory management system, right? That's directly inferenced into Cardinal's original stuff, and basically be like, listen, from now on, guess what? You don't have to worry about figuring out how much supplies you need. And also from our end, making sure that we have those supplies on hand. Now everything can be seamless. So the minute that there's a shortage at the hospital, Cardinal already knows it and is already sending you those supplies before you even know it, or even has it medically, or even has it positioned close to you. So that this way, if let's say you put an order in, it's not going to take them 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get it to you. It's literally going to be within a day or two. You know, these are the kinds of things that Amazon does. But Amazon has a much more developed AI system. So this enables Cardinal to have a very similar system. So now they can do demand forecasting. They can do categorization, and basically end up, instead of wasting so much money on other parts, end up taking that savings and doing one of two things: giving it back to the end customers, like the hospitals, right? Or split it with them, so that this way it's almost like, oh, look, we were able to save $1 billion. Here's a little bit of money here. Here's a little bit of money here. And they end up doing really well.
So it's a unique go-to-market distribution strategy with Cardinal that could have network effects. It's exciting.
How do you know that one of the hospitals that Palantir is already working with isn't the one that sold it to Cardinal Health?
That's a key. I don't know. But I think this is definitely a very underappreciated use case that I've been trying to wrap my head around, why Palantir hasn't done the deal. I honestly thought that McKesson, Cardinal, and AmerisourceBergen already had internal tooling like this, that they already had something going on. But speaking to a few people, they don't. They're literally just, okay, this is our warehouse. This is what we have. This is what the customer ordered. This is what we're going to give to them. There's
so during the pandemic, everything must have been crazy because of all the stuff they had to manage, right?
And here's the thing: you don't know the craziness of downstream effects that people don't even realize. Here's an example: a lot of the saline that we get in the hospital systems, all of that stuff comes from Puerto Rico. When Puerto Rico was hit by multiple hurricanes and all that stuff was down, there was a nationwide shortage of saline, right? There's sometimes, if you look at it, my wife's a pharmacist, she'll tell you there's nationwide shortages of drugs at times. So now you have to figure out how you're going to source these products. You're going to bill for, like, how you're going to do it. And then on top of it, there's a billing aspect to all this stuff too. This is a very complex, heavily regulated field that I think if Palantir can help solve, could be multi-billion-dollar deals per year that come their way. But it all depends on how they're going to execute. I think this is a first step towards actually becoming a default operating system for the medical supplies logistics architecture for the entire country, if they're able to do it successfully. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be able to do it because they did it during the pandemic when it came to PPE distribution.
You know? I think one of the challenges that you might be talking about, Chris, specifically is in maybe some of the headwinds that they've already faced is having to implement something like this is a massive cultural change for a lot of organizations, where you literally have to rely very heavily on some of the systems that are built. And I think sometimes it's very uneasy. Like, I know when I went through it in 2017, having to deal with these guys, it's like it's changing the way you work, right? And so you get used to doing something for, say, 5-10 years. Luckily at that time I was only an engineer for like 3-4 years out of college, so it was easy for me to transition. But imagine some of these old timers that have been doing something for 20-30 years, and some of the contracts that they may have built, or some of the under backdoor dealings. When you're talking about $198 billion of TTM, think about how many different backdoor dealings are kind of going on that are now going to be, I guess, brought to light, that will no longer kind of be done in the background. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that when you're dealing with a lot of these things, like, people can sneak away with $100 million here or $100,000 here. That no longer is going to be the case. And very often as well, sometimes it requires people to go back to work, because things are going to be more efficient when you're thinking about things like that. And I think also some people might be thinking specifically about, what is this going to mean for my job in 5-10 years if I implement a product like this? Think about how much more efficient everything that you're talking about is, right? In a hospital specifically, you're not going to have people that need to go around, once a quarter for a week to outline how much additional supplies they have before they need to order more. That's somebody's job that unfortunately gets impacted at the end of the day. And so when you're talking about Palantir, great for the company. Obviously, that means more revenue for them, and great for the overall business that is implementing it. But I think the people that make the decisions within the organization are sometimes very scared when a company like Palantir comes around for that particular reason. People that are okay with making things more efficient and love the efficiency aspect of things. But I'd love to hear Sachin's kind of opinion on this, because I'm sure he's working in the technology consulting aspect of the upstream business, and maybe you, Chris, as well. Trying to implement a new technology is like pulling teeth in any sort of organization. So I experienced it firsthand, and I'm sure you guys have as well.
The question is, this doesn't sound sexy, but just to give you an idea, that in most of the industries, 60 to 80% of working capital is tied in supply chain logistics. That means the money. See, we talk about capex and opex now, but where it is in the system. I mean, you are investing money, you are spending money, but where it is in the system. So 60 to 80% of it is in the supply chain logistics. So when every day we hear about the news that Palantir is doing this in supply chain logistics, the question is that why the fuck they are focusing on supply chain logistics than other things? Because this is where the real problem lies. That if you make your supply chain more predictable, that means the cash you need to carry, the inventory buildup you need to do, okay, the timing, you optimize on a lot of things. So the return and the gains that you get out of it is in multiples. I'll give you a very simple example, and I just it triggered my mind when Chris was saying, recently, like in Malaysia, we had suddenly a shortage of a lot of medicines. At least I observed, and people said there is a shortage. And I asked, like, what is happening here? They said a lot of these medicines are going to Singapore. I said, why? I said, because of China lockdown, people are hoarding medicine in China, so a lot of people are taking medicine. Nobody can visualize these kind of scenarios now. But when this kind of the hoarding or the shortening of supply happen, there are some trigger events somewhere now. So if you know those trigger events, you can optimize your supply chain and everything quite well. So there is a lot of money that is stuck in the system like this. Okay, like for example, the moment you get a news of Everglade happening you need to run the simulation. Okay, what does it mean? What are the repercussions and the reverberations going to happen in market? That's where the supply chain logistics, and how you can do it. You want to do it as a quantitative exercise, and you want to do it as an exercise which is very integrated using numerous sources of data. So if you don't have a system to access it, you don't take advantage of it. It's not just about saving cost or increasing efficiency. It's about making competitive advantage over your peers who don't have this. So that's the game here.
Yeah, and there's also another aspect to it too, like where inventory, especially that's just sitting on shelves, is actually costing you money whether you use it or not, right? And especially right now with high interest rates, think about this way. If you're a business, you have $1 billion of inventory sitting around somewhere that's not sold yet, that's $1 billion. So every year, if there's $1 billion just sitting, That's $50 million that you're paying in interest charges. So if you're able to kind of reduce that inventory on hand because you're actually much better with your supply chain and logistics architecture, you can end up saving literally 25, 30, 40 billion dollars because you're not keeping as many things on hand because you have a system that's going to do all the routing for you. That's going to simplify. Like that's one of the use cases that they had with the Army, where literally the Army was allocating funds to certain projects and certain areas. But the thing is, they didn't know that they were going to need the money or they're not going to need the money. So what did Palantir do? They created a system where now if there's unallocated funds towards the end of the year, and then other areas that needed the money, they're able to optimize where that cash is going. So I think what a lot of people think is that the way that like an organization works is that everyone just runs off of one balance sheet and one pool of cash, and it's not like that. There's cost centers because that's how you manage projects. So if you have a cost center, you budget like, okay, this cost center has $1 million budget. So you're allowed to spend up to $1 million per year. Well, guess what? What if you only spend 500,000 and there's $500,000 left, and literally you're in your last, I don't know, 60 days. You know you're not going to need that money, but there might be someone else who's gone a little bit over budget who needs that money allocated to them. So now what can they do? They can just take that money, free it up, put it elsewhere in a bucket, and then this way they're able to actually pay for things on time, and they don't have like all this capital like just sitting around being allocated to resources and projects that not necessarily providing any value. And when you think about it in terms of the billions of dollars mark, it's a huge amount of savings that literally Palantir ends up paying for itself.